This is critical thinking on digestive system anatomy, and here are the questions. This is the first one. The second one, where you have to identify the incorrect statement. And here you have to identify the true statement. So let's go to the first question, which talks of the functions of the mesentery and tells you that it includes all of the following except. So let's look at the statements. The first one is it provides a passageway for the neurovascular bundle, that means nerves and blood vessels and lymphatics. Now this is a true statement because if you look at the mesentery, and let's say you're looking at so if I draw, let's say that is the a coil of the ileum, a cut section of the ileum or the jejunum, and then here I'm drawing the mesentery. So it goes around, and that's how it comes. So now this double fold of peritoneum is called the mesentery, and it does provide a passageway for blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics, because say a blood vessel is here, this is the artery, this is how a branch of the artery would reach the ileum, and let's say this is a vein up here, this is how the venous drainage would go into this vein, and here we have a nerve coming here, so the nerve will come through this mesentery and go into the plexus present here, and lymphatics, which we usually show in green, will pass out this way and go into another lymph channel. So it does provide a passageway for the neurovascular bundle and lymphatics. Then the second statement is it compartmentalizes the peritoneal cavity. One of its functions is to compartmentalize the peritoneal cavity, and this is also true because in certain areas you see, because of the presence of mesentery, you have different peritoneal cavities, and just here you can see that there is a cavity above and then there's a cavity below, and in the peritoneal cavity you have different compartments which are known as lesser sac and greater sac, so it does do that. So this is a true statement. The third one, provide mobility to organs. This is also true, and again from this picture you can see, because it is hanging through this long curtain, you can see that the ileum can move either way. It's capable of moving because it's suspended by this mesentery. So it does provide mobility to organs. So all organs which have a mesentery are mobile. So that is true. And the last one, which says increase glandular secretion. Now this is the false statement, and hence the answer to this question, because you can see there is nothing in the mesentery which would cause increase in glandular secretion. The glands are present in the wall of the ileum and they secrete here. So the mesentery has no connection to that. So hence this is not going to do that. So this is the right answer to this question. Now let's look at the next question, which asks you to identify the incorrect statement. So let's look at all of them. So the first one says the absorptive area of the small intestine is increased by the presence of plicae circularis and villi. Now this is a true statement because plicae circularis are macroscopic or gross, or what you can see with the naked eye. So if this is a piece of the small intestine, it is thrown into these permanent folds. So these are permanent folds, and these are known as circular folds, or also called plicae circularis. And if you kind of look at it from the side, you'll see that this is how it is folded up. So this is kind of looking at it from the side. Now look at the surface area, it has increased. If you were to stretch this out, this would be really, really long. So it does, plicae circularis do increase the surface area. How about villi? Villi are microscopic structures which will help to increase the surface area. And again, if we look at this, so if microscopically, let's say we had the epithelium which was just thrown into these simple folds this way, and then we have the epithelium which was thrown in each of those folds in turn were thrown into these finger-like processes. And then you can see this, so going up into these finger-like processes. So can you see how much more the surface area has increased? So villi are microscopic and plicae circularis are macroscopic, and they both do increase the surface area. So that is a true statement. Let's go to the next one, which says a thrombus in the celiac axis artery will cause ischemia of the stomach, the duodenum, and the jejunum. Now this is false, because the celiac axis artery, or also known as the celiac trunk, supplies the stomach and the first half of the duodenum. So it does not supply the jejunum. So therefore there will not be ischemia of the jejunum. So if you remember, the three ventral arteries of the aorta which supply the entire gut are the celiac axis, the superior mesenteric, and the inferior mesenteric. The celiac axis comes out and supplies the stomach and the first half of the duodenum. So until this point. So until this point is the celiac axis which supplies it. So it gives branches here, it gives here, it gives branches to the spleen too, and it gives branches to the liver. So all of these are supplied by the celiac axis, and including the pancreas. The pancreas also gets supply from the celiac axis. The second one is the superior. So this was celiac axis. So second one is superior mesenteric. This supplies the second half of the duodenum. So this is the second part of the second half of the duodenum. The first half is by the celiac axis. The second half of the duodenum, the jejunum, the ileum, and going up. So the jejunum, the ileum, the coils of the ileum. Then it goes up to the ascending colon, including the appendix, and then the right 2/3 of the transverse colon. So this is a little bit of a messy figure, but the right 2/3 of the transverse colon. So from the second half of the duodenum to the right 2/3 of the transverse colon is through the superior mesenteric. And then the inferior mesenteric supplies the left 1/3 of the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, the rectum, and down. So that's how this supply is. So therefore, if we erase all this, so therefore a thrombus in the celiac axis will cause ischemia of the stomach and only part of the duodenum, and of course it will not cause ischemia of the jejunum. So this is an incorrect statement. And from the diagram that I showed you just now, you also notice that the duodenum has a dual blood supply. It gets supplied by the celiac axis and the superior mesenteric. And the other one I showed you was the transverse colon. So if you looked at the transverse colon this way, and you saw that the right 2/3 got a supply from the superior mesenteric and the left 1/3 by the inferior mesenteric. So these are the two organs which get a dual blood supply based on their development. So this is the incorrect statement. So this would be the answer to this question. But let's look at the other choices that we have. It says the branches of the vagus nerve reach the nerve plexuses in the ileum through the mesentery. Now this is true because one, the ileum has a mesentery, and we just looked at the previous question where we saw that if this was the ileum, the wall of the ileum, and this is the mesentery which surrounds it, and we saw that how the nerve plexuses, how the nerves reach the nerve plexuses through the mesentery. So the vagus is a nerve which supplies most of the gastrointestinal tract until the right 2/3 of the transverse colon. So it comes through the mesentery and then goes to synapse in the myenteric and the Meissner's plexus, which are present. The Meissner's in the submucosa, the myenteric in the muscularis externa. So therefore, this is a true statement. And let's look at the last one. The functions of the mucosa include minimal local surface movements, but not generalized bulk movements of the entire organ. So this is also a true statement, because if you look at the 4 layers of the gastrointestinal tract, you can see that the first layer is the mucosa, which consists of the epithelium, and then we have the lamina propria, and then we have the thin muscularis mucosa, also known as muscularis interna, which consists of inner circular and outer longitudinal. Then we have the submucosal layer. So all this area is the so this is the mucosa, this is the submucosa. Then here is the muscularis externa, inner circular, outer longitudinal, but a much thicker layer. And then lastly, on the outside, we have the serosa or adventitia. So this is the serosa, this is muscularis externa. Now it says the mucosa includes minimal local surface movements. Those local surface movements are brought about by this muscularis interna, or also known as muscularis mucosa. When this contracts, all that it can do is move this surface. So there, there's a slight rippling action like that. It cannot cause bulk movements of the entire organ. That can only be caused by something which envelopes the organ on the outside, and that is done by the muscularis externa, which is this one. So therefore, this statement, what this statement says is true. So the answer in this case would be this one. Now let's go to the third and last question, where it's asking you to identify which of these is a true statement. So let's see this. It says contractions of the submucosa cause peristalsis. This is false. Contraction occurs in muscle, and you saw in the previous diagram that I drew, muscle was seen in the mucosa and muscle is seen in the muscularis externa. Submucosa has loose connective tissue, glands in certain areas, so therefore it is not capable of causing peristalsis. The second one is lack of intrinsic factor will lead to improper protein digestion. This also is false, because lack of intrinsic factor leads to a condition which is known as pernicious anemia. And the reason is that intrinsic factor is required for absorption of vitamin B12. B12 is needed for maturation of red blood cells. Now, if there is no intrinsic factor, B12 absorption will not occur properly. So red blood cells will not mature. You end up with anemia, and that kind of anemia is known as pernicious anemia. Protein digestion is dependent on pepsinogen. Pepsinogen, which is activated by HCl, and then this pepsinogen gets converted to pepsin, which digests protein. So intrinsic factor has nothing to do with activation of pepsinogen and conversion to pepsin. So therefore this statement is incorrect. Let's look at this one. An enlarged left atrium will compress the trachea. This also is incorrect. So these two were incorrect too, because an enlarged left atrium will compress the esophagus. So if you look at it from the side, and you're looking at the heart from the side, and if I draw the heart, this area here, this part here is the left atrium, and here is the esophagus, which lies behind. The trachea divides into its two bronchi way higher up. So if this is enlarged, this will compress the esophagus and cause dysphagia. So therefore this statement is false. And the last statement, which says the liver sinusoids contain both arterial and venous blood. This is the true statement, because the sinusoids, which are present between the liver cells known as hepatocytes, they do contain both arterial and venous blood. The hepatic artery sends its blood into this, and the portal vein also sends its blood into this. So the reason being, the portal vein is carrying blood which is very rich in nutrients. Those nutrients can pass into the cells. The artery carries oxygenated blood, and so that's how the liver cells get the oxygen. Plus, because of the pressure in the artery, the blood is able to flow upwards towards the central vein, which is present here. So that's how the blood can flow in this direction. So therefore, this is a true statement, and hence the answer to this question.